Welcome back. Dominic Cummings has left Number 10 Downing Street after a bitter power struggle over his role as Boris Johnson's chief advisor. And the Prime Minister is now heading into the crucial stages of Brexit talks with European leaders without the mastermind behind the Vote Leave campaign. Well, I'm joined now by Elliot Wilson, a former parliamentary clerk who works in crisis communication. Very good morning to you. Goodness me, perhaps the Prime Minister should be picking your brains this morning, because something of a power vacuum being left in Number 10 after this week, isn't there?
Good morning as well. Yes, it's a bad time for this to happen, but to be honest, this is the culmination of a series of failures in Downing Street and a general sense of drift that's been coming for a long time. So I think anybody who's been observing Downing Street will not be hugely surprised.
It's interesting, though, it was only 6 months ago the Prime Minister used a lot of his political capital off the back of his landslide victory, defending his chief advisor in a seemingly indefensible breach of lockdown. He seemed untouchable, and now he's out with his box.
Yes, I mean, it was an extraordinary defence that the Prime Minister mounted of Dominic Cummings. It is alleged that the final straw between them was briefing against his fiancée, Carrie Simons. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it is said that he felt that the Prime Minister felt that that was beyond the pale and that Cummings had to go. So, you know, things can change, and it's all about interpersonal relationships, and that seems to be something at which Dominic Cummings is not very good.
The trouble is, the optics in all of this, aside from sort of the poison and the psychodrama of personnel reshuffles, there is a Prime Minister who looks to be turning from one person to another and is being described by Cummings, we're led to believe through briefings, as indecisive. Where will he turn to next? Who will he be leaning on? Some reporting it'll be Michael Gove, others saying he could be looking for a sort of kinder new era, perhaps a more Remainer-centric government going forward. What's your bet on that?
Well, I think Michael Gove has played an important part in the government since the last election. He is, to all intents and purposes, the Deputy Prime Minister in terms of MPs. I think the Prime Minister really has a choice. He needs a Downing Street Chief of Staff, and he needs one very badly. It's a matter of whether he picks a high-profile figure. Some people have talked about Sajid Javid, or somebody of slightly secondary rank, but from the Commons, somebody like
Sajid Javid would be a strange choice, wouldn't it? I know he's a close ally of Carrie Simons, who it appears to be calling some of the shots at the moment, but Boris Johnson had that enormous showdown when Rishi Sunak was brought in.
It would seem an odd choice, and I'm sceptical about some of the rumours, but it is said that Mr Javid has pitched for the job. But I think it's perhaps more likely that he'll appoint a Chief of Staff who's a solid but behind-the-scenes figure, somebody like Henry Cook or Nicky da Costa is the other name I've heard, who would be very good at it.
In the short term, Lord Eddie Lister is in position as an interim Chief of Staff, there to kind of steady the ship, because we are at this critical moment, aren't we? Of course, Cummings was very much steering the ship in terms of Brexit negotiations, and we're hearing from European leaders that the next week are really critical. Could we be floundering, groping our way towards a no-deal scenario as a result of this?
In all honesty, I don't think Dominic Cummings is going to be a critical figure, or his absence will be critical to the actual negotiations. That's in Lord Frost's hands, and it's either safe or it's not, depending on what you read in the papers. We are coming to a critical time on Brexit. There is a lot to be done if we're to get some kind of deal before we leave the single market. But I don't think Dominic Cummings is the critical figure here.
OK, Elliot Wilson, former parliamentary clerk who now works in crisis communication. Really good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel.
Now, boasting unbeatable views across central London, the Royal Lancaster Hotel had been set for a grand reopening after a